It's important when you mill up your stock to have all of the edges and faces at 90 degrees. You always want to start with good square references and work from there. So I've got one edge on each of my seat boards that I need to joint. And so let's do that now. So I've milled up my seat boards. They're all, you need 5 at 1.5 inches in thickness. You need it to be 3 1/8 of an inch in width and 14 3/16 long. With those 5 seat boards, we need to go from left to right, and that would be your left to right, and number them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Before we do that, we need to decide which one should be board number 3. That's the one in the center. The center board is going to have a pommel on it in the front. That's that little element that is a little sharp place right in the middle that lines up with the middle of the back splat. It's going to be the center. It's going to be something that'll help you with symmetry for the whole chair. So, but that's seat board number 3. So let's see which one should be seat board number 3. First, let's look and find if we have anything that's noxious, meaning that something that we don't want to celebrate in the board, something that might be a problem, like a really bad knot, or let's just look at the boards. Well, this one has some really good color on this side. That's pretty nice. The grain's kind of running that way, so let's put that on this end, because the chair's going to kind of flare out like that. This one is running very, very straight, and I think that might make a very good seat board number 3, something for the middle. This one's kind of plain. We'll put that sapwood going down. I think that'll look good there. This one has a lot of sapwood. Let's put it, let's put this one out here on this edge. I think that looks good. So we're going to number them. This will be seat board number 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. Okay? Now, let's square them all up. All right, so I'm using this square to get everything kind of squared up, and I'm looking at my joints, and even though we're going to add some bevels to all of those joints, it's easier to do that if you start out with nice square joints. So that's really good. I don't see any problems here. And what I want to do is I want to add a red line about an inch or so from the back of the seat. And this line will be a line of just a visual line that when I'm gluing up, I can take a look at it and I can see if the line is straight, that everything's going to be in the right orientation. Nothing will be shifting forward or whatever. So we're off to a good start. Now, let's see where we're going to place our bevels to give the seat that big old smile. I'm going to put some 3-degree bevels on the edges of all of the boards except for the outsides of seat boards 1 and seat board 5. So this is a little bit of an overstatement, but if we draw them on here, on the front and on the back of the board, then that'll help us when we're applying those bevels to make sure we get them in the right place. So be 3 degrees here and 3 degrees there. Seat board number 3 will end up being a trapezoid, if you remember that from geometry. Now, seat board number 2, working toward the left, we're going to put a 3-degree bevel on this edge of the board. And then we're going to put a 3-degree bevel out there. This, in effect, would be a parallelogram, if you remember from geometry. And then here, we'll put a 3-degree bevel on the inside of seat board 1. So we have kind of an upside down V, then we have a V, and just to carry that across, this is going to be a V, and this will be a V. So we have parallelogram, trapezoid, parallelogram, and then that. So V goes up, V goes up, V goes down there. Now I'm going to do the same thing on the back side, and then we'll draw some more lines that'll help us at the joiner when we apply those nice bevels. I'm going to make some lines on the inside of all of the faces or edges of the board where we're going to have a bevel. I'm doing this because when we go to the joiner and we joint the bevel along these edges, I want to be able to see when the whole edge is beveled. And if I do this and drag it from edge to edge, then I'll be able to tell. So let me get all these done, and then I'll meet you at the joiner, and we'll set the angle, the 3-degree angle for the bevels. Now we need to set the fence at 3 degrees to the table here. Now this will be 3 degrees as an obtuse angle. Obtuse angle is greater than 90. So I'm going to use a sliding bevel, and I'm going to use something that will set my standard for angles in the shop. And I need to be consistent, so this is what I usually use. So all I do is move this up to 3 degrees, and it's got a little clamp back here on the back. And you push this down, and now it's rigid at 3 degrees. So I can put this out of the way and take it to the joiner itself. Now it's set to 3 degrees, we're ready to make some bevels. We've got to make sure that since our bevel goes this way and it's an obtuse angle, this corner should go right here in the corner. Then we go across, we'll make a couple of passes, and we're going to count the passes. If we make the same number of passes on each edge of the board, in theory and hopefully in reality, the board will be the same width. all the seat boards will be the same width. So let's get started. In this nice little smile here. So yeah, it's going to work out very nicely. And you see why we put those V's there, and we identified all the right places for our 3-degree bevels to go on the edges of the board. All right, so now we need to do some joinery. We're going to add in some little dominoes. These are number 5 by 30 dominoes. You could use biscuits if you wanted to. Process is very similar. You can use dowels. Process is a little different because you've got to take the 3 degrees into consideration to make that smile and you're just going to reinforce it. Now, what's the reason for this? The reason is to supply a reference. If you supply a reference and you locate 3 in each joint, then when you put glue on it, the boards aren't going to squirt out in all different directions. And this will provide a little bit of strength. You don't need a lot of strength because this is not a huge seat, but this is just perfect. And I'll show you how to do it with the Festool domino. We've got to find the location for each of the 3 dominoes in each joint. So I'll show you how to do that. To start with, let's just make a little mark about 3 inches from the front here. And then we're going to make a mark about 3 inches from the back. And then in between, we've got 8 1/4, so at 4 1/8, we'll make a mark, just halfway between these two marks. Keep everything squared up. And I'm going to make a little short mark at each one of those joints. See, just like that. Don't make a line all the way across, that'll confuse you. Then I'm doing the same thing here. And then, notice as I flip the square around that my fingers never leave my hands. That's a trick I learned when I worked in the circus. Yeah. The only time I was worried about the fingers leaving my hands was when I was feeding the lions. Yeah, that could really be dangerous. All right, so now we've got these locations. Now, what do we do with those locations? I'm going to take a square and I'm going to draw a line here and put an X. This is the top of the board. This is the bottom of the board. I'm going to put an X down here. Why am I doing that? I'm doing that so I won't get confused and put the domino in the wrong place. If you do that, then best thing to do is maybe get out a bottle of bourbon or something and toast the evening, because you've messed up your project. And I advise you not to mess up your project. You've got to do that everywhere you have located these points. So I'm going to do that, and got an X at the bottom. So you could go to the refrigerator and get yourself a soda or some water or whatever, and just watch me work if you'd like. It's going to take me just a little time. It's very worthwhile. In order to make the mortises using that same process for the other boards, right here, the other side of this V, we've already put a domino on this side of board number 3. So the other side is going to take the same process since it's at an obtuse angle. So either side of the standing V gets the same process with finding the mortise for the domino. All right, now let's go over, I'll show you how the domino works. The domino has a cutter here. This is a number 5 cutter, and it's kind of like a router, except that it spins and it does this at the same time. And so it clears out a mortise for the little domino to fit in. So I've got it set, and I'm going to use this as my bearing surface. And when I move it up and line it up with that white line that I just drew, and lift it up flat against the edge of the board, then I can plunge in and I can make a mortise. It's a little oversized. I made it oversized so that when we glue up, it doesn't have to be so precise from side to side. But height-wise, it needs to be precise. So I'm going to go ahead, use the same method for locating the mortises in these other locations. So now what we need to do is, this is the top of the board, and we need to be able to put a domino right here. The situation is this angle to the top is less than 90 degrees. It's an acute angle. Well, the fence on the domino will not work at an acute angle. So we're going to have to work off of the bottom of the board. I'm going to put a B there. That B means bottom. And here is the bottom of this board. This is an acute angle. And the domino itself, the fence, won't work off of an acute angle. It will only work off of an obtuse angle. So we can't use the same process that we used before. We're going to have to change the process a little bit. So it's very easy to get the 3 degrees. And the way you do that is you just lay the domino fence up here, and when everything is flushed out right here, then this is at 3 degrees. Yeah, that part's really easy. But then you've got to get the depth. You've got to get the right depth. So to do that, then you need to measure the depth of a mortise you've already made. And when you measure that depth with a marking gauge like this, then you can take that, come over to this other side, and score yourself a line. Take your mechanical pencil with a 5mm lead in it and draw that line so you can see it better. That's the whole purpose right here, is to be able to see that line better. Because we're going to use that line. And remember, this is the bottom of the board. That's the top of the board. We're going to use that line to set our this up there, and try to set this little flat right here on that line. Now, I already had it set from a previous effort to do this, and so it's there. That flat is on, there's a flat like that on both sides. That's the center of the mortising bit, and that gives you a center line right there. So I can use that. If I needed to, I could loosen this and I could move it up and down. But I don't need to do that right now because we're right on that line. So all I need to do now is give myself something to shoot at, to work at. And so I'm going to use a red pencil. And I'm going to mark my sight lines here. And now I can, there's a V right here. I can set the top of that triangle or V on that red line. All right, so now I'm in the right place. Same thing to seat board number 5. Be able to join it nicely to seat board number 4, and then repeat it over here with 2 and 1, and you'll have them all together. What we're going to do now is find a center line in board number 3. We want to find that center, that dead center, and we want to wrap it all the way around. Now, there's a lot of ways you can do that. One way I like to do it is to try to find some common points, and these 2 board joints right here, just setting them off at some common point like that, then making an arc, making an arc. All right, there's the center of board number 3 right there. But I've got these points right here that I can use too, and I can make arcs. Make an arc. And now I can that looks good. Yeah, that looks real good. All right, so now I'm going to find a place that'll be the back of our pommel. And that's that little place that rises up right here in the front of the seat. Yeah. Okay. We need to find the center of, or we need to come out from the center and find the edge of our panel. So I'm going to do that right now. All right. Boy, that is right on it. So it looks like to me our whole panel is going to be 14 and a quarter. So yeah. So 7 1/8 to that side, 7 1/8 to this side, and that is going to be our panel size at 14 1/4. I'm going to mark this off. Now this will give me something to use to take this to the table saw and cut these pieces off so we can arrive at the panel size that we want. So I'm going to measure this just to be sure. There we go. We're at 14 1/4. That's cool. All right. So we got 14 1/4, and we can take this off. Go to the table saw. I'm ripping the same amount off of each of the outside parts of boards 1 and 5 to make our panel. So let's go do it. Now, I'm just going to clean those edges up at the joiner, and then we'll be back to work laying out the seat bowl. Okay, now we're going to lay out the seat bowl. And we have a half of a seat bowl pattern here. I'm using the center line at the back, and I'm flushing it out on the edge right here. And that's all you need to do. Bring it all the way to the back. Flip it over. Do the same thing. On the other side. So remember, flushes out here, and it lines up with this center line back here. All right, so now we have the pommel, we have the seat bowl. Now we're ready to lay out the joinery. All right, now we're going to create some joints for the seat, and we're going to do that with some notches that we'll cut in the edges of the seat boards, and then we'll rabbet those notches, and that leaves a tenon here. And when you do that, this is how this will go together. If this is a leg, then it'll fit like this, and of course it'll have some dados in it, and it'll make a great joint with a lot of strength, and it'll be a joint that looks good too. We'll want to celebrate it. In other words, make it something that is part of the design. Well, let's get started. So, we're going to be working with seat boards 1 and 5. In the back corner back here, this is where the back leg is going to go, and somewhere up here there'll be a notch where the front leg will go, and the same thing with seat board 5 over there. So I'm going to take it apart, and then I'll show you how to do the layout work with some cut lines. Cut lines. They're the way to go. All right, we're going to start seat board 1 here, and seat board 5 will be just like it, only kind of the reverse. We're going to start with the notch for the back leg. So the notch for the back leg, it needs to be the measurement that you'll find in the back corner of half of your seat bowl pattern. I'm using a marking knife. Marking knife is real important. First of all, you can always come back once you've struck a line, and you can put your knife or a chisel or something in the kerf of that marked line, and so it's a good reference for itself. So we are 2 1/4 inches from the back here. Now I'm going to come around the corner. Another reason to use a marking knife is I can see the kerf right there, line up my knife and square very easily and bring this on around. See how easy this is? You don't need a saddle or anything that's fancy. Makes marking out just so nice. And now you've got something to cut to that is a good reference. And once you slice it all away, you are ready to go. Now, right here, I've got a marking gauge with a fence on it. It's a wheel type marking gauge. I love to use these. This one is set at 1 3/4 of an inch, which is your other dimension. So we're 2 1/4 long, 1 3/4 deep or wide for this notch. Then I can take a 5mm pencil, And I can stick it right in that cut line. And now I'll be able to see it so nicely when I go to the table saw. That's a great bonus. And that little bit of graphite highlights it. A 7 millimeter will work pretty well too, but a 5 fits that knife curve just beautifully. So we can take this out. All right? Now, the front notch. The front notch is going to be 10 and 15/16 from the back of the board. We're using the back of the board as a reference. I'm going to pull this forward, and at 10 and 15/16, I'm going to make a little knife cut. Now this is going to be a shallow notch, only about 1/4 of an inch deep. But I want to pull it all the way around this edge. Okay, we're going to highlight it. Now we've got this highlighted, and we need to know and lay out the length of our notch. And it's going to be 1 11/16. So I had that set already. 1 11/16. Okay. Okay. So let's highlight that. And it's only going to be 1/4 of an inch deep. So got this one set at 1/4 of an inch. I think. Let's check it just to be sure. No, it needs to be set to 1/4 of an inch. I'm glad I checked it. If you're not sure, check it out. Okay, so now okay. So there we go. We've got 10 and 15/16 up to the back of this notch right here. I'm going to write that on the side of the board so you can see that. All the way to there. So seat board 1 and seat board 5 is where we're going to be cutting those joints into the seat. So, here at seat board 1, in the back corner, that's where the back leg is going to be, we need to cut a notch. And the depth of the notch is 1 3/4 of an inch. And this way, the long grain will be 2 1/4 of an inch. We're going to go to the table saw and we're going to cut out this back notch, and then we'll kerf out this front notch, and then we'll be able to route it, and we'll have our joinery in our seat. I've got the table saw set up with a rip blade because this is going to be a rip cut. We're going to make kind of a standing rib cut here. Kind of sounds like some really good food, but it's just a standing rib cut. I'm going to cut to the waist side of our notch, and I'm going to cut, the whole cut would be 2 1/4 of an inch, but I'm only going to cut to about 2 1/8, maybe just a little more than that. And then on the cross cut, I'll leave a little bit in the corner and I'll take it all out with the chisel. So I think I'm ready to go. Now this is just a committed 90-degree tenoning jig that I made. It only does 90 degrees, but it does it very consistently. To be consistent is very important. You might be able to do this with your clamping it to a crosscut sled or clamping it to some fixture that you would put on your miter gauge. But figure out what's best for you. Do some test cuts, but make it a consistent cut. All right, we're ready to go. Now I've got the saw set up for making the cross cut, and I'm using a block, and so I can make a consistent cut. It'll be the same on both seat boards 1 and 5. So here we go. So now we're going to work on the front notch here. And so I've got to drop the saw blade way down. And we're going to start out in the middle, and we're going to raise it up until we hit that cut line. Now the strategy is to, almost like cutting the grass, we're going to take 1/8, 1/8, 1/8, 1/8. We're going to do what's called kerfing it out. And we'll leave a little bit here in front of the cut line, and the same over here. We'll set the tooth right on that cut line, the corner of the tooth, and we'll make some nice good cuts. Here we go. There's a little bit of cut line left, and so there's a strategy that I use called run out, where I could take the square edge of the tooth and place it next to the shoulder here, And because every table saw or every spindle has a little bit of wobble when it runs, sometimes that's just enough to clean it up all the way to the cut line. We'll see. Now, the blade I'm using is a Forest Woodworker 2 #1 special grind. And looking at the picture, you'll see that there is a flat pointing in a different direction on each tooth. It alternates. And that flat at the top of the tooth helps to make a nice flat surface here. There's just a little bit that we need to clean up there, and we're going to clean it up with a router plane, a hand tool at the bench. Let's go do it now. All right, my special joinery blade that leaves a flat bottom to the joint is a Forest Woodworker 2, but it has a special grind. In fact, that's what it's called, a #1 special grind. You can find it from a number of the fine tool retailers. So just look around and see if you can find one. What's special about it is it's just like an ATB blade, in other words, an alternating bevel, but the top of the bevel is ground flat at 90 degrees to the side of the tooth. And so this one is flat on this side, that one's flat on the other side, and all the way around like that. That gives that flat bottom that you need for your joints. An ATB blade, which is the typical blade, is going to give you some little ridges that you'll have to clean up. It's important to have a smooth bottom. I've known that all my whole life, that a smooth bottom is something that is important. So yeah, this blade, very worthwhile. #1 special grind. Well, this little guy here is a router plane. It's a fine woodworking tool. You can use the edges here, or the base, to span some shoulders, and then this can clean out rabbits or dados or whatever and get it very precise. And you can be very consistent. There's a word again, using a router plane. So what I'm going to do with it right now is I want to improve the surface here on our curved notch. I want it to be as smooth as possible. So I'm going to set the router plane down, and I want to drop the iron all the way down so that it's flat. I'm going to tighten it up. And I've got 2 pieces of paper here. So when I take away the paper, then the thickness of the paper is how much I'm going to take off at the bottom of the notch. And I'm also going to look at my grain here. It looks like it's kind of running uphill, so I'm going to turn it around. Yeah. It even sliced through this little knot here, which is a good thing. Now, the reason that we want this to be so flat is because the router table, or the bearing on the router bit, is going to rub against this surface here. And if there are a bunch of bumps and things, they will be telegraphed right into the shoulders that we make. And we don't want that. So now, let's take it over to the router table and we'll route our notches, make our tenons. So I'm setting the rabbiting bit here for a 3/8 of an inch in height cut. And I've got that much above the table. Now, using a router table, all of the feed is from right to left. If you're using a handheld router, it is from left to right, so it's different. I'll use a starting pin. A starting pin is a place to secure the work while you plunge in to the bit and make contact with the pilot bearing here. Once you make contact with the pilot bearing, you can get off of the starter pin and finish making your cut. So let's see how it works. Now, let me explain the cut. I plunge in, engage the bearing, and then now I'm moving it, just like I told you, toward the left. But then I've got a little bit left to cut, so I have to break my rule a little bit, and I'm going to do what's called a climb cut, back to tap that shoulder, and then out. So it's tap the shoulder, climb cut, tap the shoulder, come back to the middle, and we're out. Now, we've got our tenon, we've got our rabbets here. Well, let's do the back notch for the back legs. It's a little different. We've got a little bit left in the corner that I forgot to take out with a chisel. We'll go do that now, and then we'll have our notches and rabbets done. You should really do this before you do the rabbiting, but it's fine. I've just got a little bit in this corner, and I'm going to hit it on the cross-cut side first. And doing it this way keeps the board from splitting. If you start out using the long grain and you push your chisel in, board might split. So do cross cut first. Well, I can dig it. You can dig it. We can all dig it. But we won't have to dig out the seat bowl because I have a special way to do it. We can do it, most of it, with the bandsaw. So we're going to start with seat board number 3 right here, and I'll show you how. All right, first thing is we need to draw a profile for the seat bowl on seat board number 3. So I'm going to start right there, and I'm going to place it here. trace that profile, okay? Then we'll do the same thing on the other side. All right, that's the place that I want to line it up. And when I line it up, I want to be able to put my Sharpie right there. And I want to be able to flush this out at the bottom corner here. So I'm good. Well, that's a start, but that's not all. Here is our pommel. Our pommel is going to be right there. This is the pommel. We don't want to cut our pommel off. If you cut your pommel off, then you could really have problems. I mean, it's just not going to look right. So, to keep from cutting our pommel off, we're going to come to here and we're going to make an extension of kind of an outline right here. In other words, the cut is going to go either from there to there or there to there. Do not cut here, but cut there. Now, up here around the pommel, we're going to shape it using a grinder. And so we'll do that after we make these cuts. We got to do the same thing on the other side here. There's my pommel, and I'm going to make a little extension of a line here. And we'll cut this, but we won't cut that. All right? So let's go to the bandsaw. We'll make that cut. I'm going to make two cuts. One cut will be on this side, and one cut will be on that side. The reason is because we've got this 3-degree bevel on each side of seat board number 3. And after I make those cuts, there will be a little ridge kind of down the middle, but we'll smooth that out later. So be sure, do not cut off your pommel. All right, let's go. You never know what you're going to find in a board. I could either toss it out or use some black epoxy resin there. I think I'm going to do that and just kind of keep on going. So the next thing is I'm going to take a grinder and I'm going to shape around the pommel up here. Let's go do it. All right, I've connected some lines here. And I'm going to grind and shape both sides of this pommel, leaving this black line here. So you can watch me do it. Of course, I've done a lot of these, but it's always fun when you start shaping. I mean, what's sculptured furniture without it being shaped? So, I've got it clamped down. I want to be able to keep the piece from moving. And I've got a little ridge here that I want to get rid of. And there's one more thing I need. And I'm going to go get it. It's real special. I'm back with something very important. If you're going to sculpt, you need to be able to mark things. You need to be able to mark them so you know where you need to work. And after you've worked it, you'll be able to see where you've been. So I'm going to be working right here. And I'm going to be working also up from this line back here. I've got this marked here and here with the red pencil. And I'm going to continue using the red pencil to help me until I have it sculpted into the shape that I desire. So, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a flat, a 45-degree flat right here, all the way down to that line. So, here I go. See, I can tell where I've started working right here, trying to make that flat. And as I push it down to the line, I can look at my red lines here and watch them diminish, and I'll know when I get there. I need the feel of it. Feeling of it, the sculpting is a multi-sensory kind of thing. And one of the senses is the sense of touch. You can touch it and you can decide what that surface needs. I want this surface to be a little bit concave. Right now, it's kind of bordering on just being flat. But that's a good starting point for making it more concave. Now, along here, I want to stay away from all of this. I don't want to go any deeper. Don't want to mess that up. And I don't want to take off my pommel line there. What I'm going to do to get that concave surface that I'm looking for, I'm going to use the shape of the tool here. The pad is round. So if I stand it up and make a few strokes right through the middle of this, I'll slowly impart that shape to this surface. That's what we're trying to do. All right, we're not trying to get a finished surface right here. We're actually trying to make seatboard number 3 to have a line here and on that side that we can use to trace onto seatboards 2 and 4. In other words, we're making the template here, kind of a living template. So, all right, let me flip it around to the other side. Do the same thing, and then we'll push forward.